Blog Talk Radio.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
I'm your host,
Yes.
Breezy Universe.
And I'm your host, CDaWay. And welcome to the We Can Do It
to the We Can Do It podcast. And today's topic is about what is home. Your home, your lifestyle, growing up, what is home. So I'm going to let C take the lead on this, and we'll go from here.
Okay, so today's episode will be dealing with home, origin, background, place of comfort. When you think about the question, what is home, what comes to your mind? Is home an address? Is it a town or a state, location? Is it a sense of belonging as it relates to family, groups, associates? What is home to you? What does it mean to you? Like I said, this episode is going to deal with the background, and I'm just going to kind of go into my synopsis and kind of summary of my background personally, and once I'm done doing that, I will pass it over to my co-host, and she will do the same. As it relates to location, I'm from Monroe, Louisiana, which is in northeast Louisiana, in the mid-southern part of the country. I was born and raised here. So was my parents. Well, at least one of my parents. They were both born here. However, my father, he was raised in another location. But as it relates to the location of my background, my hometown, my home, I'd say medium to average size city, maybe now a little bit smaller. Really close knit. I've never considered myself a hometown person. I'm from here, but I've always had a sense of other places because I got to travel at a young age. Home was somewhat, it was good and bad. It was eventful. It was insightful, I'll say that. My upbringing was pretty dramatic by most people's definition. I'll just say as a child, I grew up not knowing who my mother was. My mother was drowned when I was 7 months old, and the people who raised me never told me anything about her. So my sense of home is unique in a lot of ways, to say the least. My mother was young when she got drowned. I was subsequently raised by someone who I'll just say wasn't my mother. And she raised me without telling me who my mother was. So that was a big factor on how I looked at home. Kind of a skewed sense of what it was. Because, your upbringing, your origin, they kind of starts with your mother. Most people are where their mother is from. So that was a big question in my mind growing up, as far as home, as far as origin, as far as background, who I came from, who is my mom. That's a documentary that you can see on YouTube. It's a investigative web series because it's ongoing, and it's related to the research and investigation of my mother's life and her death, and all things related to that. I started that because my origin, as I got older, became more important to me. And not knowing where my origin was from definitely had an effect on me as an adult. And I think in so many ways our upbringing has an effect on us as adults to some degree. So my sense of home contained of a lot of questions. I knew my father. My father was definitely, I would say, promoted and, put into my sense of, who he was. It was definitely a priority to the people who raised me to let me know who my father was. But like I said, not the same for my mother. So home for me was very, very odd, very different. I didn't have any siblings, no brothers, no sisters, no aunts, no uncles. So yeah, that's really what my home life was kind of based around. Like, there were good things, there were bright spots, but for the most part, it was plagued with questions and no answers. So when it comes to where I'm comfortable, it's usually within myself, because that's where my confidence was kind of based from an early age, because I was the only one that I could really count on. And it's where my comfort zone is. When you talk about home and a place of comfort, that's where my home was, in my heart, like in my mind. Um, so when it comes to background, I mean, I'm African American. As far as I know, my mother, and as far back as her timeline and her bloodline goes, we're all African American. As far as my dad's side, they're all African American, with the exception of two, where it goes back to maybe the 1800s, where the roots go to the Virgin Islands. So that's my background genetically, I guess I should say. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's what I could say. You know, home in that sense is about. You have anything to say? Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I mean, your story to me is almost like a movie. Like, imagine having to, and it's, I'm sure, like, everybody has their own unique story on how they were, like, brought up or their home life. But in yours being so unique, you didn't have your mom at all. Like, so all you really had was yourself. Even though you were raised by what would be considered family, you still, like, only really had yourself, because your foundation, you didn't get that foundational upbringing with your mom. That was snatched from you, literally. So I just find your story and your upbringing so very interesting. I don't know, as far as myself, I was born in Philly, always lived in the city of Philadelphia, born and raised. My story, I never really talk about my story, so I guess this is kind of like the first time I'm really, like, fully talking about out everything with my family life. Like, I had my mom and my dad, but I didn't have them at the same time. My mom, from my understanding of her, if I'm looking at my childhood self and how I viewed my mom, she was always working. Always working. She was in the military, so she did a period of basic training for the military where she was just completely going all the time. And then when she finished basic training, she would go away like every 2 weeks to do more training. And she was also in school to be an LPN and, you know, nursing. When she left the Army, she worked as a nurse, the night shift at that. Like, my mom always worked the night shift. So, you know, she was going during that time, and, you know, I was basically, because I was the only child at the time, I didn't have siblings. I had a lot of cousins. When I was coming up as a kid, I stayed, like, with my aunts or my grandmom from time to time, and one time a godmom. So I pillowed to post a lot. Like, I would jump from household to household a lot within my family. My dad, only thing I really knew about my dad was that he was in the military. He would come around every now and then just to check on me, but it wasn't like I would spend time with him. Like, it wasn't a situation where I would go to his house and sleep there for, like, the weekend. I never did that. Let me see. This is really, like, deep for me. Okay, so then in the midst of that, as you're a kid and you're going from, you know, one person's house to the next, as a kid, I don't think parents realize it takes a toll on the kid a little bit, especially when they don't have that solid stability. And I didn't have that. I just had my cousins and, you know, my grandmom, like, my grandma was my primary caregiver when I was at her house. So when she had to get up and go to work, she had to figure out where she was. Like, sometimes I would stay with my aunt, but sometimes I would go to work with my grandma. Like, I remember getting up like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to get ready for her to go to work, because she worked at a newspaper stand. So she would take me with her. Like, if she ain't nobody to watch, which was a lot of the time, she would just take me to work with her. So, you know, I had those moments with, you know, my grandmother. I always say, every time I mention her, I say rest in peace to give honor, because if it wasn't for her, like, I don't know where I would be or what kind of person I would be. But, yeah, so I dealt with that. And then in the midst of that, both of my parents, you know, they had their own issues going on. So it wasn't really a big, you know, let's raise her to be great kind of thing. I mean, they loved me for what they could love me for, but I think it was more, they were too focused in their own world. So I kind of like, even though I had them, I didn't really have them. And I don't know, like, you living in a city life, you kind of gotta you don't really get who really stops and thinks about this time to. Like, it's always something else you gotta do other than think about what's going on in your family life. Yes, you think about it, but it's like, I don't know, like, you got other things, especially the older you get, it starts to become like, you got other things to worry about. And then it's sad because, you know, when people pass away or if things happen, you don't sometimes get those times back with that person. Like, I always say, I wish I had like a closer relationship with my dad. Like, my dad, when he did come around, he was never mean to me, like, always nice, always sweet, you know, but it just was like he just wasn't being a parent. Like, he was like, I don't know if it was shifting it off on my grandma or my mom because he had things going on, which, you know, I ain't going to front. I'm an 80s baby, and I come up in an era where a lot of our parents were substance abusers. Both of my parents were, heavily. So that played a major part in my upbringing on the strength of, like, just certain situations that I was in as a child that I shouldn't have been in. You know, like, certain things children our age coming up we shouldn't have saw, we shouldn't have been privy to, but that was just a life. Like, it just, you, in the midst of all of that, you staying with your grandmom, and your grandmom don't know how to handle certain things, and she trying to do the best she can, but it's a lot of family drama going on. It's just, I was just raised around a lot of toxicity, if I can sum it up in a word. But at the same time, it was like, especially in the case of my mom, like, I knew my parents, both of my parents, I knew they loved me. I just felt like some part of my upbringing could have been better, but due to their circumstances, it just wasn't. And so I had to grow up kind of similar to you, see, where you say you kind of had yourself, like all you had was yourself. I just had like the experiences. So from every experience, even in my younger self, I tried to learn a lesson out of it. But there were times also as a kid where I feel like I fell short. You know, when you don't know yourself and you're not groomed to have confidence and you're not groomed to be aware of yourself, you start, you know, doing things and being around people who aren't good for you. And so I kind of like, if you want to say, in certain situations, you kind of live on autopilot because you don't know. You don't know how to navigate. You just coasting. That's how it was. That's how it was for me coming up. Like, I didn't know it at the time as a kid, but I kind of used my energy to tell me, you know, if I should be around. And even when I knew in certain situations that I shouldn't be around a person, I always felt like I still should be around this person, even if it's to learn the lesson on why I shouldn't be around this person. I don't know, I know it sounds weird, but that's just what I did. I just made my friends here and there. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and kept it like, I don't want to say pushing, but I say to this day, I'm still a loner. Like, I don't really, like, I'm not cool with people or around my family, but kind of like, I've kind of like built the foundation within myself. So my home is technically and has always been in myself. At the time, I didn't know it. As a kid, you want to be closer to your family. You know, you want to be closer to your cousins and your aunts, and, you know, family get-togethers, y'all get together and y'all having fun, but it don't turn into an argument match at the end of a Thanksgiving dinner, or, you know, when family come around, it's all good when the drinks is flowing, but when we talk about things that, like, really affect us, that's when people want to fight. Like, I've been in the midst and have seen things as a kid that just, like, the stories I could tell. But, yeah, like, my lifestyle now, like, if I could pull it all up into current 2020 Sabree, I would say it took me to realize, as, like, once I became an adult, like, I would say up until recently, like, yourself is what's most important anyway. Like, to rely upon my mom and my dad, like, eventually I had to let it go, like, the resentment, because I held resentment a lot as a young kid coming up, like, angry, didn't know where to place my anger. You know, and I held a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. Like, I was mad at my dad and I was mad at my mom. Yes, absolutely. Like, this shit hurt. Like, you had to really, like, when you really sit and think about, like, all the time lost, like, yeah, straight. Like that.
So,
but then it took me, like, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
It just took me some self-understanding and some self-assessment, assessing myself and having the courage to self-assess what home was. You know, where is home really, like? And I had to peel back the layers to figure that out. And the first place I felt like where anybody should start with, of course, is self, but it's your home too. Like, how did you become the person you are today? Like, how far have you come? From what have you come from? So, did you have a question per se?
Yeah. So, how do you feel about how a person's origin, childhood, upbringing, foundation, base, affects them as adults? Talk about that.
I feel like it can affect your childhood. Affects you in many ways. If you don't have the proper caring as a child, it can disturb your confidence. It can make you be good things too. Like, just if you're getting the right attention and education as you're growing as a child from your parents, it can give you all kinds of things like self-discipline and awareness and just being more knowledgeable, having focus, having, you know, a kind heart. All of those things can adjust how the outcome of a child. Like, it's not a wonder when you look around today and you see children doing adult things. That's because their adults aren't adulting them. They feel like they're grown enough to be doing what they're doing. And when that happens, it could be consequences to that. It could be consequences of a child being too overly sexual. Like, next thing you know, you got issues of, pedophilia happening, because we do have that happening a lot, like where children are being looked at like adults. And children that are like the easiest targets for molestation, the easiest, especially when they don't have no knowledge of, self and security, and parents are all over the place. They don't watch them, like easy targets. And that's the sad part about what can happen, how a person can become broken down, and the destruction of it when they don't get that love and affection from a parent, and that attention to detail, knowing what your children are doing at all times, who your children are with, what are they reading, what are they watching, who who they talking to on the phone, who they texting on the phone. Like, you have to know. And when you live in a place where as a kid you gotta raise yourself, that is a scary thing. Like, a child, imagine that. Some children get it easier than others, depending on their circumstances. But it's the fact that they even have to. That's the sad part about it. But yeah, those things can affect the character of a child when the child doesn't have stability and is very unbalanced, and they're in a very unbalanced environment.
Definitely. I definitely agree. When it comes to children and their upbringing, definitely many things come into play as it relates to their parents. And it's like a generational pattern.
Like, if I can say,
go ahead.
Can you hear me? Like, if you think of what's a tradition, right? One of the traditions, and like I can say in my neighborhood, we called it being a latchkey kid, right? And a latchkey kid is basically a kid when your parents are not home. That means if they at work or wherever the fuck they at, like, excuse my language, I'm sorry, wherever they at, you have a key to the house as a kid. So when you get out of school, if I'm not home, you got to have this key to get in the house. You literally have kids that have to raise themselves because their parents are always gone.
Right.
It's a thing. Like, I don't know too many people of my era who came up who didn't have similar stories. Like, really, like, to be honest, like, it was just my mom, but my mom had to work, or it was my pops had me, but, he had to go to work, or he had to be out, or he had something he had to do. So I'm in here, I got to make sure I eat. I got to make sure, if somebody come knocking at the door, do I answer? No, I'm not supposed to answer. Well, what if it's family? But like, you got to figure out how to maneuver now as an adult in place of your parents. But I got a kid mentality. Like, I'm expected to think like an adult and be an adult, but I have a kid mentality. And then I know if I do something wrong, my parents is going to be mad, or my auntie or my grandma going to be mad. If I do this, that, and the third, I know I'm going to get a beating. Or I know, like, it just trickles down from there. Like, you're susceptible to a lot of things, too, that you never know. Like, depending on what areas you may live in, that plays a factor in your environment.
Definitely.
I don't know.
Definitely, your environment kind of relates to what I was going to allude to next as it relates to home, and that your ancestors, your the generations before you. Some people have a connection with that to deeper degrees than others. as it relates to, you know, just the word, the term ancestors. Some people may refer to them as those who are related to us who have passed on or deceased. This is also a part of our origin or our background. Are we living? Of course, we can't live exactly in the way that our ancestors did, but do we even know really into the extent of how they lived? Because I think that also has an effect on us. I mean, for the ones who know and the ones who don't know, because it gives you a sense of context as it relates to who you are, where you are today. Everybody's home is not the same. Everybody's origin is not the same. Everybody's ancestors is not the same. Might not have all came from one place. So I definitely feel like it's important to do your genealogy and do your ancestry and background and find out, if you don't know, your cultural origin and your ancestral origin.
That's so important. That's so important to find out that, to go back and see. Like, my family, we talked about it, but I was a kid in a room. So, like, I really didn't retain everything that was told. So it took me, like, I did do a little bit of checking on some of my ancestors and some of the people who came before me. Like, I have pictures of my great-great-grandmother, and then I have a little bit of knowledge of her children. Matter of fact, her last living child, her daughter, is in Orlando, Florida. So she would be my great aunt. So, and I've spoken with her as well about some information about the family, which was very cool to find out, as far as how things, how the journey began. As far back as you can get to how the journey began, that's really like where real home is at. But, like knowing that, it kind of like adds to your armor, adds to, the person inside you. And then this is funny because then it all goes back to self. Like, so, yeah. I enjoyed that. I definitely enjoyed researching family history, and not for the gossip side of it, because it can go that way too. Like, you want to know who got married to who, but why, and did you leave Aunt Millie for this person? I ain't want to know it for that purpose. I wanted to know for the strength of, like, the legacy, like how far you've come through history, on the history side of it. Like, yeah. This is important. It's important to know your family tree.
Yeah. Home also represents a sense of, it's supposed to represent and symbolize a sense of stability. I say supposedly because, according to your background and your home, and your sense of it, that may not be the case. As you alluded earlier to your background, where you moved from place to place.
Mm-hmm.
It's an aspect of life that a lot of people can relate to. Just as well as there's people who can relate to, being in a stable home.
Right.
I had questions about my childhood, but it was more so about my origin as far as the stability of my home. It was solid as a home could be. I like to talk about a sense of home as it relates to how we relate to just ownership. Because when you think stability, you think home, you think legacy. How is where we come from? How does our home affect our aspect and points of views on economics? Because that's an important part of the home. How the home was ran, how the home was taken care of financially. As it relates to my background, I came up in a pretty fortunate situation as it relates to, financial stability. I never needed for anything as far as materials. As a matter of fact, being, the only child in the house, I was privy to a lot of, I would say, privileges and benefits of being the only child.
Right.
Even though materialistic things weren't a object of desire for me, these are the things that I got to experience and obtain. And I guess that, in a way, kind of set the course of how I looked at, stability, home. That was something that symbolized, your castle, where you kick your feet up, where everything's okay, where you don't have to worry about, okay, how am I going to get this? Like everything that you have and everything you need is at home. I grew up in a sense like that. But as it relates to just, people in general, economic, how they look at stability, career choices, career patterns, is definitely also molded by home and upbringing. And I think that's something that definitely has to be, looked at and assessed and analyzed when it comes to what you value, what you possess, what are your basic foundations and fundamentals. What do you think about that, Bree?
Well, financially, I can say we struggle. I struggled as a kid. Absolutely. Like, I remember a time me and my mom stayed in the shelter. If I could, say how deep it got sometimes. Like, so with money and things like that, when we came by it, we would he robbed Peter to pay Paul when it came to the bills, when it came to finances and money. So, but to be honest, as a kid, I felt it, but it was moments where I didn't. I mean, I didn't have the best childhood at all, but I had pockets of moments where, like, I did have some enjoyment. And then my mom and dad, they tried to always make sure, as far as keeping me a clean kid, as far as clothing and always having food, wherever I was always safe. That's one thing I could say about my mom as far as that. I mean, I did have, like, situations, again, like I said, some things children shouldn't be involved in. But for the major part of me growing up, whether or not I was at my aunt's house or my grandmom's house, or whether I was with my godmom, or, you know what I mean, I was always a clean, put-together kid. I had my little ponytails and my cute little, matching outfits and my school uniform, and I was okay as far as that. And I always am grateful for that, because even though we didn't have much, they tried to make me feel like I wasn't going to feel that. But, finances does affect, the home, because that can tell you whether or not, in some cases, this goes back to parents having to work all the time. Like, when you have to work all the time and you're trying to build money and build finances for your little family, the sacrifice for that, if there's not a proper or stable place for them to be, is also you losing that time with them. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on finances being a part of the structure of the home.
Okay. Well, coming to the end of this episode, is there anything you want to say or add in before we close out?
No, I just want everybody to think about their own upbringing and think about their own home life, and, if they can go back and think about what things, occurred with themselves, and try to go back and see whether or not you had your good experiences or your bad experiences, cherish the good ones. And for the bad experiences that you may have had, think about the trauma and try to heal from it. Like, because the only way to heal from it is to confront it. But definitely, because that can help, how you reflect in your home today. Maybe there are certain things that you do today in your home that you brought from yourself as a child, or, certain ways you live today definitely played a role in your childhood. So look into that. I mean, for some people it may be a good, for others it may not be, but home is where the heart is. And home is definitely where the heart is, where you are at all times. You are home within yourself. But yeah. And let us know about it. You can definitely find us on IG at We Can Do It 101, or Twitter, We Can Do It, and Facebook as well, We Can Do It. And let us know what your home experience was like. How did you grow up? What traditions do you have? What were some social or cultural experiences that you had as a kid, and how has that reflected in you today? I think that's very important. You got anything you want to add before we go?
No. Well, I do want to give a shameless plug. Check out my documentary on YouTube. Who Is My Mom? Christine Harris. That's Christine with a C. check it out. It's a documentary series. It's ongoing. There will be more episodes. It's just a journey of my research and investigation on the life and death of my mother. And you can also see me on IG, Instagram at Carlitos Harris, and you can see me on Facebook at Carlitos Harris, and also Parler at CDaWay, and also Rumble at Carlitos Harris, CDaWay.
And we're on Rumble as well. We can do it. We're on Rumble as well. We can do it. It's a show.
Yes. Also, we can do it on Instagram and Parler and Facebook. So check us out on the social media platforms. We do have more products and services available coming very soon. Website coming soon. We're building, expanding, upgrading the quality, upgrading the service, and we'll see you next time. Our next episode will be on creativity. What do you do? That'll be the title of the next episode. What do you do? What do you do for entertainment? What do you do for creative endeavors? What are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? What do you do for mind stimulation, physical stimulation? What do you like? So stay tuned for the next episode of We Can Do It, the podcast show. CDaWay.
And this is Breezy Universe. Peace out, y'all.
We can do it.
We can do it.